So welcome everybody to this ICS SCADA session in this morning. Thank you for joining us. It's almost full crowded, so for the last day at Ignite, I hope your event went very well. So I want to introduce our ICS SCADA session. On our left side of me, right, we got Ariel Little, CISO of First Quality, our customer, and CyberX Technology, who's going to take off this session for you. First, I want to tell you a little bit about what our industry team does within Palo Alto Networks. So as industry team, we are responsible for getting the correct information, the correct collateral, the correct solutions from industry perspective towards you as an end customer. Also, what you have been seeing in the upcoming, one moment please, Cyber Range in the Expo Hall is managed by the industry's team. So we are giving you a complete benefit of the industry's team, not only architecture-wise or collateral-wise, but also trying to help you stop, prevent threats and other stuff. So you can come with your own team to our Cyber Range, and we will help you to defend your OT environments. With that said, I will give the space to these two gentlemen who's going to take off.
All right, so first, we're going to do some short video just to get us in the mood. If it works.
And of course, yeah.
Do we have the speakers up or something?
It's always good to start a presentation with something that doesn't work.
Yeah, this is.
I strongly recommend everybody to work with MacBooks and
Oh, yeah. If it just stops. Okay, so what we should have seen here is the Italian job. And this is a scene where the guy is basically hacking a traffic light system. So in traffic lights, Netherlands, specifically Amsterdam, it's one of the most common places for accidents. So we actually see an accident here. And
not so fun fact, by the way, is that Amsterdam is rated like #1 in the Netherlands in the amount of injured cyclists and pedestrians. So just watch your steps when you walk out of this conference today.
So basically, traffic light system is an OT network or an operational technology, OT operation technology, sometimes also called ICS, Industrial Control Systems, or SCADA, which are basically systems that are designed to do something physical, something that has some physical repercussions, manufacturing, creating some pharmaceutical companies, energy, water, and basically every company has some sort of OT network. When I say every company, even Google has one, where in its BMS network, building management system, so the elevators, the air conditioning that you have in every room, and for the data center as well, those could be IP systems as well, which have not a lot of security embedded in them.
So we'll try to cover the main differences between OT and IT, and I'm kind of restricted to stand here just because they're using the camera over there. But basically, there are a lot of advantages and differences between IT and OT. One of the things that I strongly recommend, and we'll get into it later, is to truly get the benefits of the differences. Our controls engineers has a lot of knowledge that we in the IT world don't have, and the other way around. So let's try to find a way to converge these two worlds and try to talk together. So it's a dialogue. We'll try to cover during the session the three aspects that everybody knows: the people, the processes, and of course the technology differences. And one thing that we'll try to talk about, and we'll bring as many as we can, is use cases. And feel free, with raises of hands, to ask questions. I know that it's a big crowd, but we'll try to answer your questions as much as we can.
And just to understand, the audience in the room, in show of hands, how many people work in some sort of an OT organization or have OT problems? So like half. All right, sure. Let's go on.
Okay, so when we're talking about IT versus OT, you see the slide, I don't have to talk about it, but mainly in IT, we're focusing on three main aspects: the CIA, the no CIA, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the systems. When it comes to OT, the priorities are a bit different. The priorities are quality and safety. So it's not uncommon to see controls engineers that don't really understand what's all the fuss that we as security professionals are trying to do in order to block or tackle certain behaviors on their end. How many of you had to disable USB devices across all of their IT network? Only 2 raised hands, but I know that's 3. Thank you. When it comes to the OT world, try to do it. Try to enforce a policy of no more USB devices are allowed, banning certain behaviors, patching systems. I know that patching a system in the IT world, well, take the Patch Tuesday from Microsoft, I wouldn't call it easy, but it's doable. Imagine what it would look like to patch an OT system every time the vendor is sending out a new patch. It's a downtime. So a lot of things are uncommon in these two environments. We're talking about different protocols. We're talking about older systems. It works. Why are you touching it? That's the answer I keep getting when we're trying to push something new, to change processes. So bear this in mind, and let's try to dive into what we can do. Before we talk about the examples, the industry examples, one thing have changed over the last few years: modernization. We're calling it Industry 4.0. We have different names for this. But basically, one thing is very common. Our controls engineers wants to get the benefits that we provide our end users, our salespeople. They want to use tablets. Mobile devices were always banned on our plant floor for safety reasons. We don't want an employee to walk with his device and run into a forklift, a self-guided vehicle forklift. It's dangerous. We don't want them to interfere with the local network for various reasons. But now they want the tablets. Now they want the new dashboards. They want to use machine learning, AI, all of these nice buzzwords that we see in the IT world. They want to bring them over to the OT world. Guess what? Most of them run in the cloud. So it's no longer two different worlds. It's no longer segregated in a way of we've got one island, which is IT. We've got another island, which is OT, which is disconnected from the world. Nothing is connected. We never get updates. We never get remote support. We never get any of this. And we can just firewall them. Back in the days, we just had Cisco's firewalling, disconnecting these two networks. We had ACLs, very simple. It's no longer the solution. And migrating to Palo Alto wouldn't bring you the solution. It's not just replacing one box with another. It's nice, but as Nir mentioned yesterday, there are a lot of things that are evolving, and we need to look for the future and figure out what are our plans in order to allow this digitization and convergence of IT and OT. We've got motivated adversaries. Perhaps they just want to use some sort of ransomware. Perhaps they don't. But we've seen over the last year, and Nir can share a few examples, of companies that brought down to their knees. Literally, they could not ship. They lost their supply chain management processes just because of a ransomware eating their IT systems, which was connected to their OT systems, and suddenly you cannot manufacture. And that's the only thing that matters. They put the bread on our table, not the other way around. IT is nice. It's nice to have. Finance systems, legal systems, everything is great. But if we cannot manufacture, it's worth nothing. So we always try to protect the IT. We forgot about the OT. It was easy to forget about the OT, sorry.
And as we grow, or as we connect those networks, more and more threats will come in. And we've seen just in the last year with NotPetya and WannaCry, and just last month with the Taiwanese manufacturer. So we saw that those attacks happen. It's not necessarily has to be a targeted attack. It could be some sort of ransomware or something that's in the wild and happens to pops into your network, and it's loss of worldwide productions.
So just a bit about First Quality. I'm sure that all of you read this, the preview for this session before you just decided to join in here. So I don't want to focus on our products. Again, we manufacture a lot of products in the consumer product market. Most of our products are private label, so you won't even see them here. These are products that you would get from the big stores all over the world in 40 countries. We've got about 5,000 employees. The majority of our workforce is working with the OT environments. We're talking about a lot of engineers. We're talking about a lot of QA. And we're very proud in our products and the quality of our products. But that's in a nutshell about First Quality. Let's focus on security today. So when we talk about IT from Venus and OT from Mars, one of the things that we need to remember is that for many years, the controls engineers were not part of IT. They're still not part of IT. They were brought into the company, and our company and many of my peers, and we talk about it in various peer forums. They started their IT education, if we want to call it, on the floor. They never got their various degrees from Palo and other network providers or Microsoft. They learned it the other way. Somebody bought a line of machines, they needed to operate it, and they were tech savvy enough to start learning and start researching by their own. So there was never kind of a methodology around how do we manage this OT network as an IT network. They also had the feeling that security is holding them back. Because for many years, we were the bad guys. We're still the bad guys. We're still the ones saying that, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. We're the no guys. And we should be the enablers. Think of the benefit of us becoming an enabler in our organization. Before they come to you and say, well, there's a great dashboard, why can't we come to them and say, well, let's harness the capability that we've got in the cloud and get certain capabilities and bring it to you. In order to do so, we need to do A, B, and C. We need to replace the firewalls. We'll need to do that. We need to integrate it with a CASB solution. Whatever the solution it is, you have to design it for them. You have to show them that you're a partner. So for many years, it was isolated, disconnected. We try, and that's one of the things that we've done, and we'll talk about it later with CyberX. We try to bring benefits. We try to bring capabilities into their world, and the first benefit that we showed with CyberX was had nothing to do with security. We monitored the network, and we found misconfigurations that caused them bandwidth issues. We found misconfiguration that caused them downtime, and we showed them that security can help. Once we demonstrated it, we got their attention. And once we got their attention, we started educating them. So work together. Try to find the peers to work with within your OT organization. Inventory. Sounds simple, right? You know, we all have our CMDB, ServiceNow, whatever. We've got our inventory. We know how many servers we have. We know how many desktops we have. We know how many mobile devices, firewalls, other network appliances we have in our network. Guess what? They don't. In many cases, they got a very old documentation that they got from whoever the vendor was when they built a line. Try to multiply it by many dozens of lines. It's just books. When you ask for a Visio diagram, they scratch their heads, and the response is, yeah, sure, we'll get back to you in like 6 months. Because there isn't one. So how can you protect something that you don't know? I don't think that any of you can protect a network that is literally non-existent. So that was a big challenge for us. No inventory, no visibility. If you don't have the inventory, how can you know if a server is patched, if a workstation is patched, if there is connectivity from point A to point B or directly to the internet? We can guess. And a lot of our work was a guesswork. We tried to interview people. We tried to get ourselves in their shoes, walk the floor, and better understand what do they do on the daily job. And when somebody said, well, once a week I get an update from this vendor, how do you get this update? Oh, they send me an email. Okay, good. Not good, but so what do you do then? Oh, I click on a link. Okay, terrible, but yeah, sure, go ahead. I download it to a USB stick. Why? These questions need to be asked. You need to develop your own methodologies. There's no cookbook that would work for all of you. We couldn't find one. If you have one, great, share it with me. But we couldn't find. We built our own methodology. And we built a methodology for different segments of our business. And we switched and evolved it when we gradually developed more and more locations. And again, we talked about the no control, ACLs. It's nice, but it's so 80s. It's still there. So let's move forward. So as I mentioned, visibility, yeah, okay. Do you see it? Yeah, no. Yeah, it takes time.
Oh.
Yeah, it's here. So visibility and profiling. That was the #1 priority, or that was my objective for kicking off the project. I said, I want to know what I don't know. Don't tell me what I know. The unknowns are the most important. So let's first get a mapping, or at least knowledge of what's running in my network. What's the bandwidth? What's the traffic that goes from plant A to plant B? What's the traffic that runs internally in our network? Because typically you have the firewalls, the internet-facing firewalls. You know what traffic is flowing out. But what about what's not going out?
All right, so this is where we came in. Little bit intro about CyberX, 30 seconds tops. We are existing for some time in the world, 2013. Our mission is to focus on OT security, not IT security. OT has its own characteristics, own protocols. It's very sensitive. So you can't just scan it and treat it like IT security. And our mission was to go and understand how those devices work, how they behave, to be vendor agnostic, because you have dozens of plants, and some of them can be Rockwell and Schneider Electric and Siemens and ABB, and so many vendors are out there. You need something that to be vendor agnostic and completely passive and risk-free to that network. Again, it's a very critical network. You can't have any risk or possible risk to that network. And we are in a lot of different verticals, whether it's energy, manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, and more. And let's talk about the most interesting part, which is the actual technology. So what do we actually do? So first of all, visibility. Know what you have. Which devices do you have? Are they, what types of them? Are there a PLC? PLC is a programmable logical unit. This is the controller itself. How many racks? How many slots? What's the version number that you have there? The Windows machines that you have, are they an HMI and their engineering workstation? What they're allowed to do and not allowed to do. And all of that, you have to do completely passive. So without any probing or getting the information from the devices, just by plugging into the network using a mirror port or network tap, or even a PCAP file, to just analyze the PCAP file itself. Everything to extract from the packets themselves. So a deep packet inspection for ICS protocols. Once we understand and we get the information about all the devices, we do some sort of a asset discovery or asset inventory. We profile and we understand what are the devices themselves, what are their purpose, how do they behave. It's not like the IT networks were very dynamic. You go, you download a file, you log into the internet, you move some stuff around. In OT, once you program a device, now it should do the same thing it was programmed to do. So we module how those devices actually behave, and then we actually provide real-time detection. So if something's misbehaving, whether it's a change in malicious behavior or suspected malicious behavior, like there's a Wi-Fi router suddenly connected to my network, or a new device that for some reason pops into to the network and start communicating, or even a PLC that somebody programmed to do one thing and suddenly it's doing a different thing. So you have to get that real-time alerting to understand what's really going on. And of course, integration to all of the other systems that you have in your network, because it's not just about the OT security, you have to connect it to all your other security systems. And then you reach from a point where basically you didn't know exactly what you have in that network. It was like a very black box to something to gain some visibility.
And I can tell you that that's scary.
Suddenly,
when you see what you have, it's a scary nightmare.
So just even get a map of what you have, how it's connected. Get an architecture diagram. Get some sort of an asset inventory. Real-time alerting for something happened. Go take care of it and understand why it happened, and the ability to do some forensics activity and understand there was an attack. What happened before that? What led to that attack? Maybe somebody programmed that PLC. Maybe to that machine that was programming, somebody SSH to. And so you can trace back and understand and investigate what was the real root cause analysis.
There isn't much to say about Palo Alto. The fact that you're all here means that you're already clients of Palo Alto. Yeah, no, I will not skip the slide, but I would just say one thing. We chose Palo Alto at about the same time that we decided to work with CyberX. We were a Cisco shop. We were using Cisco all over the place. When we started to get the visibility, we realized, and back then we started a process of RFIing and RFPs, a replacement for the Ciscos, and we realized that we cannot get the solution we want to. We cannot be proactive enough, and we cannot even be reactive enough when we started seeing the feeds coming from CyberX, and therefore we chose Palo, and through discussions with them, we understood their roadmap, their vision. It aligned with our vision and CyberX's vision in the manufacturing world and in other aspects, and we decided to team up together. And
So basically, you had one silo for OT security and one silo for IT security, or perimeter security, actually. Why not combine the two? Why not create an actual use case where you take the devices or the assets that CyberX detected and put that into good use?
Exactly, and that was the idea behind it. How do we leverage both worlds and get the true use case of let's protect our network, let's protect our manufacturing network?
So this is a first example. So CyberX detects all the attacks or all the devices that you have in the network. IP, it has a name, it has the MAC address, and of course, we know that this is an HMI, this is a PLC, this is a Rockwell, this is a Siemens, this is an ABB device, and then we can get those attributes, those PLC, HMI, we can just put those as tags in Palo Alto. Now we can create actually devices or create addresses in Palo Alto for those, with those tags. So you have basically, you take the asset inventory that you have and you put that in the firewall. And then you can even create dynamic access groups, DAGs, based on specific tags. Once you have that information and you have those groups already built, it's very easy to go and create some actual use case here, to create a template. Every HMI can only program PLC and in a specific protocol. That's it. HMI can only read tags from PLC, sorry. Engineering Workstation can only program. So you can define those profiles, basically. I'm not talking about the specific firewall or specific device. I'm talking about a template that adapts to your whole organization, and you can put that everywhere. Once you get that sync of assets, then it's just a matter of creating a profile or a template, and that's basically it.
So once we got this consolidated monitoring, what do we do next? And here.
Yeah.
So we've got the consolidated monitoring. It works, perfect. How do we operate it? So we thought about, let's build our unified SOC for IT and OT. Yes, we started building our IT SOC. We had something else. We replaced it and started rebuilding everything. And we realized that there is still a disconnect between the worlds. IT is IT, OT is OT. You take a SOC tier 1 engineer and try to teach him OT, it doesn't work. But you can teach him how to talk to the control engineers, and you can teach the control engineers how to look at the dashboard. So we created separate dashboards for our control engineers looking at CyberX, and our IT engineers or IS engineers looking at our SOC. And they started developing kind of a joint world of, if I see something weird, I can pick up the phone and call you. Perhaps I don't know what it means, but I know that something, the alert would say, there was a programming of a PLC outside of the usual behavior. I don't know if it's legit or not, but he knows who to call. So he can call somebody in the control engineers, and sometimes they will say, oh, that was a mistake. And we've seen it. People make mistakes. You know, we're all humans. Till the age that machine learning will manage our networks and everything would work, we still have humans on the floor. And that was one of our biggest achievements. And then we realized that it's not enough that we have a good SOC that combines both worlds. We also, we also have to kind of develop the run books and enable our people to work better with certain checklists. They know what to do now. So we minimize the time, we minimize the noise. There was a lot of noise initially. You got alerts all over the place. You don't really know where to start. We created the language between the teams. and they work perfectly well together. We actually trying to hire control engineers now to work in our SOC, so we'll have more leverage, more kind of better communication internally. And then, you want to take this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we just created some basic workflows, like playbooks for the SOC Tier 1 analyst that basically needs some sort of a decision-making tool or a process to make him, I'm opening an alert, this is what it says, now I have to do this, now I have to do that, now I have to pick up the phone and call my OT engineer and ask him whether that PLC programming was actually legit or non-legit.
And of course, with everything that can be done in a workbook, there should be an automation, because our time is valuable. We don't have enough time for everything to just spend the time on kind of check the box. So everything that we could automate, we got to a point where we used another vendor, Simplify, to sit on top of our SOC, on top of the Palo Alto, on top of, and actually Simplify is also on your application framework. So on top of everything, and just automate the mundane tasks. You see an alert, you can investigate it, you enrich the data, you get the feed from CyberX, and then you move forward. So very, very intuitive and time-saving and cost-saving for me as a CISO, because I can't just hire more people. Yes, I wish I could, I can't find them. If you've got friends, send them over, but we just can't find enough people.
So automation really helps, but the question is, how far do we take automation? Do we eliminate the human factor altogether? Not necessarily. Well, in OT, you don't. It's critical systems out there, and doing some sort of mitigation or stopping something completely automatic, it has a risk. So at some point in time, somebody has to validate before. And let's take two use cases as an example. The first automation use case we can do is automate the work process or streamline the detection to prevention process. So there's an alert, reach to the SIM, tries to analyze a PLC scan detected. That device is really investigating the CyberX platform. That device is doing a lot of stuff out there. Why is it scanning so many devices? I want to proactively go and block that device.
And by the way, scanning is legit. In most cases, that's how they work. So we need to isolate the true events. You can't just, oh, there's somebody scanning. No, that's how they work. So we can't just block them.
So it's really understanding if that scanning is legit or not legit. And let's say it's legit. Now the person has to call their IT guy or their firewall guy, put a new firewall rule, put a new policy in Panorama, put it on this device. It's a broken phone. So why not straight from the system itself, block it, create that policy straight from the system without any communication with the firewall guy, sending it to him for a new policy that's already pre-configured. But as we said, it's not completely automatic. You have to validate that this is the right thing, the right policy, in the right location, in the right firewall. So you have to notify that person that there's a new policy. We put that in, but we haven't pushed that into the firewalls, into the actual devices. We created that, and we send an email to the admin, the firewall admin, saying, you have a new firewall rule. Just click on the panorama, review that. These are all the information that we have. If you want, you can even reach our alert and investigate yourself. Make sure it's in the right place in the rule book, and push it to the relevant firewalls.
And it could be an email or a ServiceNow ticket. You know, we use ServiceNow, but it's the same.
Mm-hmm. And it's not for everything. We have to really fine-tune and understand what are the use cases that are relevant for that. So we actually sit down and we discuss what are the relevant use cases, whether it's a PLC stop, it's an unauthorized changes, and even some potential scanning, which are very relevant to OT, but only on specific use cases. So this is from start to finish how the whole process works. So CyberX monitors the network. Something happens, you create an alert, send it to the SOC guy, investigation, And then once he decides that this is really legit, he can send that to Panorama, create a new policy, send an email saying this is what happens, and all it has to do is just to validate and push it to the appropriate firewalls. So we talked about the automation of MTTR, mean time to respond. But let's talk about automation or saving resources. And for this, we can harness the application framework that Lee actually talked about in his call, in his session. We can take the application framework, utilize all the logs and all the information that's coming from your firewalls. You don't have to deploy our sensor. You don't have to deploy CyberX at all. You can just utilize the thing that you have right now and basically add CyberX as a service without any sort of a deployment. And it's really easy to use. Let's hope that this one doesn't have sound, so it's good. So you can actually investigate. This is the movie actually that Lee showed in his session, the screenshot from the movie itself. So you investigate the device, you get all the information. This is straight from the app itself, right? You get information, you can look at the alerts. That device has open alerts for some sort of a behavior change in a specific protocol, in Modbus for that matter. Redirect, understand that it's happening between two devices. Understand that these two devices came from very specific firewalls. So for each one, you know from where they came. It's very, very important to have that, and it's very easy to have that. You don't have to deploy, and not only you don't have to deploy, all the data is stored there. So it's not as soon as you deploy, only to start learning from there. You already have all the data that you've learned in the past. So that's really, really good. So this is actually, okay. So this is actually taking ICS Security as a service in the cloud. Now, I'm not saying that we solved all the problems. Yes, we're still working on those. The technology, the solution, the app is right now in final stages for GA, not GA yet, end of the year, because we still have some problem to solve. We still need to, instead of doing deep packet inspection, you're doing deep log inspection. So that means that CyberX and Palo Alto has to speak the same language. So the app IDs that Palo Alto has to be very exact and have to go into the layer that CyberX understands, and really we can work together to make sure that our apps or that the understanding of those industrial protocols is the same, and you'll get the same value that you have from the PCAPs, even that you're just looking at logs. So that's the challenge that we're working on right now, and this is the way to go eventually. You want to save resources, save deployments, and bring it to the cloud.
OK, so let's summarize it and then open the floor for questions, if there are any. As I mentioned earlier, it's about the convergence, about the communication between the IT and OT teams. We cannot do it ourselves. We cannot do it alone. I've heard many of my peers saying, well, they're pushing us out. They don't let us look at their network. They're afraid that we'll bring it down. Build the trust. It takes a lot of communication and a lot of sessions. And I started this work at, I had longer, just kidding, it was 20 years ago. But it takes a lot to build this relationship with our OT guys. They need to trust us. When they do trust you, when you show the value and you bring the visibility, sometimes they will just thank you. And when they thank you and when they work together with you, they would like to work more with you. They will call you in before they make a decision on buying a new line. Now they're calling us every time. They want to get our advice on architecture. They want to talk to us about what's the next feature they can implement. How can they make it work better? So that's the key point that I would like you to take from this. It's not just the technology. The technology is great. CyberX and Palo work together, and yes, that's proven. But without the proper process, without talking the language of your people, you're going to lose the game.
And just one last thing. You have your interesting keywords. I don't know if you're getting the presentation at the end or not, but just type those things into Google, and you'll have some great information about some understanding of what is the ICS terms that everybody's talking about. You have the NIST 882, which gives a great overview of industrial cybersecurity. The NIST directive, very relevant to Europe. And even the global ICS risk report, which we actually took a lot of customers that use our solution and try to understand what are their main threats that they have and really get some sort of an tangible information from live networks. And the last one is Who Owns ICS Security by SANS, which basically talks about the challenge of OT SOC or unified SOC. So, and that's it.
Yeah, so
One thing before we move to the questions, later on the day at 1:30 we have again an initial session presented by Siemens. So if you have time, please join us. It's in the same room.
so any questions?
So it's obviously quite a big challenge for most companies. I'm from Carlsberg, so we suffer from a very similar journey to yourself. This looks very reactive in a sense. Do you find after a period of time it becomes more proactive in terms of from the threats and the risks?
So, so the question was, this looks very reactive. Does it eventually becomes proactive? So yes, definitely. We've talked about two major values. We talked about asset discovery, and we've talked about discovery and inventory, and we talked about threat detection. But there's also a side of vulnerabilities. How do you treat vulnerabilities in the OT network? Not the same as in the IT network. You can't patch everything. And how do you simulate and create what-if scenarios for what is the biggest bang for the buck? Where do I need to either patch or put some sort of an existing solution or a different solution to help me mitigate the threats that are coming from that area?
Yeah.
So you have to go there.
Yeah, and I'll add something else. Yes, it gets proactive. Once the communication channel is there, we suddenly get calls from our controls engineers wanting us to train them more on security. They want to be involved. One of the guys called the other day and said, well, he didn't find the vulnerability, but he got an email from a colleague in another company, and he said, they ran into this issue. Do you guys know about it? Of course, we didn't, because we're not OT experts, but we started investigating into it and just trying to understand if we're vulnerable for the same issue. It wasn't something big, but then we configured our systems to pick it up, because we didn't know about it. So it's kind of building the dialogue. Without the dialogue with the OT engineers, there's no way we would know what's going on there.
I have a question to the CISO, because there are a lot of companies like CyberX out there, Security Managed and Clarity and others. Why did you make the decision for CyberX? What is their advantage, or can you say something about it?
Sure. I won't get into the details, but we had piloted 5 different vendors. Initially, we started the process by recording pickups and just sharing it. It wasn't really sharing. We brought them to our labs. Each one of them got a 1 month worth of recording of one line, one small line, I would say. And we narrowed it down to 3 vendors, and then we narrowed it down again. And then we got 2 finalists to go to our plants. They got a week to install their devices, and within that week, we wanted to see value. So some of them didn't speak the business language. They couldn't understand what they're looking at. It was all technology. Some of them understood what we're trying to achieve, what's the value of such a product, which we liked. We had better chemistry with 2 out of the 5. And the last point was that they truly found a few things that we didn't like to see on our network. And it was like, okay, boom, that's exactly what we want. And we saw the value within the first day. So they installed, and the first day, they literally showed us the light. And then it was 4 additional days that they just showed us more capabilities. And So it was more of a proof of value rather than a proof of concept. And then we moved to the commercial side, and the rest is history.
Basically testing it in your environment.
Yes,
Very good.
yes. I can tell you that marketing-wise, all of the companies give you the same story or similar stories. When it comes to, and I don't know in which industry you are, but it's different to be in manufacturing than in energy, then it's different. You know, you can't just take somebody that say, well, we work only with gas turbines and say, well, let's use it on your diaper machine. It doesn't work. It's different. It's not just the RPMs. It's more parameters that you need to monitor. It's more changes. Any other questions? Sure.
Did you have some level of segmentation before using the tool, or did you also use the tool to be able to create segmentation between supervisory, POC?
The question was if we had segmentation prior to using the tools, and the answer was the segmentation was based on ACLs just blocking two separate networks, IT and OT. That was basic. We wanted to get to a point where we can truly micro-segment our network, both the OT and the IT, and that's why we picked Palo. But without the visibility, you can't do a micro-segmentation project without knowing what you've got there. If you have a better idea of how to do it, I'm with you. No, because it was truly a challenge to get to a point where we can just say, well, now we can start talking about the micro-segmentation. Actually today, literally today, they're sitting both Palo Alto engineers and our team working on our next phase of segmentation internally. So yeah.
And in a networking perspective, how do you get all this data? Is it from mirroring ports? Do you have sensors? How do you get it? How do you implement it?
Both mirroring ports and sensors in our plans. You have to remember that mirroring ports do not exist everywhere, especially in the controls engineers environment. Sometimes you get a switch with 16 ports, you can mirror only 8 of them. Sometimes you can mirror them all. You know, we worked with CyberX, and for the majority we managed to get mirror ports, but in certain cases we had to bring our own sensors to the ground.
One last thing to that, it's never about monitoring everything. You can't monitor everything. You can't span port everything. It's about picking the right places, doing some cost-benefit analysis and understanding where the major choke points that you really want to monitor. And that will actually bring value.
Sometimes you'll have internal networks within internal networks within internal networks, and there's no value to monitor them. It's a 192 network that everybody has. Okay. I think that we ran out of time. We've got one last minute, so if any other question, I'll take it now. If not, we can continue talking in outside before they kick us out. Sure.
Yes, we have many references. We can talk about it offline.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.